Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special one-on-one edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, August 1st, and I'm delighted today to welcome my colleague, friend, executive editor, and angry poodle columnist of the Santa Barbara Independent, Nick Welsh. And today I thought we'd do something a little different, which is really try to drill down in some detail and depth on this Sable offshore oil story, which has so many moving parts, and we talk about it almost every week. And I made a joke last week that wasn't really a joke, that on the very first edition of Newsmakers 10 years ago, we were talking about Pipeline 901, as I like to call it, which of course was what ruptured in 2015 and caused the Refugio oil spill. And we're still dealing with the fallout of that. Um, Nick, we've talked a lot about the various agencies that are involved in the litigation that's involved, but I want to talk about specifically two things that happened this week, and they're related very much. The first was that the Trump administration did a little touchdown dance about oil. Allegedly flowing from platforms Harmony or Heritage and Honda. And they put out a press release that as the Trump Vance administration focuses on securing energy dominance and unleashing American energy through increased critical domestic oil production, Sable announced the restart of production at the Santa Ynez facility, a move that could generate up to 10,000 barrels of oil per day per platform. This is a significant achievement for the Interior Department and aligns with the administration's energy dominance initiative, has successfully resumed production in just 5 months. And I sent you an email because our congressman, among others, was appeared alarmed by this and asked you what was up. And then a couple days later, you have this scoop you published yesterday about class action suits being filed against Sable Oil, largely because of these kinds of claims that it has.
So
Uh,
let me jump in here.
yeah,
No, the class action lawsuits were filed in the last week against Sable Oil for claiming it was in production on May 19th, which just so happens to be the 10th anniversary of the great oil spill that shut all the oil along the Gaviota coast down. And saying, this is a milestone event and we've got it going back and blah, blah, blah. And well, it turns out, in a matter of fact, as opposed to hyperventilation, it isn't in production or it's not in commercial production. And the class action lawsuits that were filed this week were filed by law firms that specialize in what they call securities fraud. And so this is basically investor protection lawsuits. And they're ambulance chasers, okay, but they're very high-end, white-collar
high-end ambulance chasers.
ambulance chasers. These are like the bells and whistles. And what actually is happening and did happen, because I read the same press release on Friday that you did from the Department of Interior. And to be honest, I had to read it about 5 or 6 times with a red pen in my hand before I could find out where the verb was and what actually was happening, other than, I mean, these guys have a sexual fetish about oil production. And it's sort of a sadomasochistic variety. And their use of the dominance lingo made me think of somebody with one of those big balls in their mouth and a leather hat over their head and a whip in their hand. I mean, and high heels. It was pretty kinky. And what actually, if you read their press release, is okay, Sable has 3 platforms off the coast. One is named Harmony. Oil production at Harmony has been deemed safe and good to go.
And these are in federal waters,
These
which
are
is
in
say
federal
3
waters,
miles.
yeah,
Yeah.
5 to 8 miles off the coast. And so the federal agency that is in charge of overseeing the platforms to make sure they're safe said one of the three is good to go. We hope to be saying the same thing about the other two later this year. That is such a far cry from actual production. So what they do with that oil, just so everybody knows, it does not get in the pipeline that we're all fighting about, or the world is fighting about, that would take the oil to the markets. It gets to a subsidiary pipeline that takes the oil from the ocean to across the street, the freeway, and up to the big plant, the Santa Ynez unit off the Gaviota coast.
Las Flores Canyon.
Yeah, Las Flores Canyon that Exxon used to own but sold to Sable. And it goes into storage tanks. And it has, I think, a storage capacity of 540,000 gallons. And that's basically good for maybe a month of testing at the rate they were testing. So it's not nothing, but it is not production.
Because they still have to get it into the Refugio pipeline, what I like to call Pipeline 901, to get it to market.
They absolutely can't get it anywhere without getting it into that pipeline. It is landlocked and shut down. And the things that shut everything down were all the gaping corrosion spots on that pipeline. So it's Sable has about 120 miles worth of pipeline. And if I got my math right, they have about 120 spots of corrosion that they had to fix. And that's what the whole fight has been about. Can you actually fix a pipeline that is so corroded and use it over again?
And
And
Exxon originally proposed building a new
a
pipeline,
brand spanking new pipeline that would be safe and size right and all that.
but they faced so many regulatory and governmental obstacles that they said no. And
Right.
therefore, through some corporate sleight of hand, came about this company called Sable Offshore.
Sable is this weird alter ego, bastard stepchild alter ego of Exxon. I mean, they won't admit it, but
Whose rent is being paid by Exxon, right?
No, okay. Exxon gave Sable $688 million so it could put the down payment on buying the Exxon plant. So it's sort of like at Christmas time when your kids borrow money from you so they can buy you a Christmas present. That's sort of how I would see it.
All right. So the Trump administration is celebrating on the is celebrating on the 2 yard line. Sable is continuing to pronounce that they're about to start pumping oil through that pipeline at any minute.
In August of 2025. Well, guess what?
And
Today's the
meanwhile,
first day.
they got a number of lawsuits, and I don't want to deconstruct all the litigation right now, but they also have the Coastal Commission after them. They have the board of the Regional Water Quality Control Board after them. They're in court with the Board of Supervisors over the Joan Hartman 2-2 vote, which we can discuss in a minute. And now come these two class action lawsuits. Is this serious litigation?
I take it seriously. Again, you know, I will say that I knew that these firms were coming to water for a while now. Because anytime you would go online and Google Sable and look at any news items, all these law firms were issuing press releases saying, "We are investigating. We are investigating." And I will tell you, I called them up a couple of times. I would say, "Okay." And they would never answer my phone calls or call me back, which I thought was weird for ambulance chasers. Typically, they like publicity. Um, this week, I got word that two actually filed lawsuits. And so what that means is they think they have enough evidence. They don't even have a plaintiff yet, right? They don't have a named plaintiff. So, but they're it's a very speculative thing. So they're saying we have enough evidence to go somewhere. We just need to get a plaintiff to sort of be the nucleus of it, and then after that we'll get more.
So
So
this would be people who invested in Sable post May 19th when
so it's between May 19th and June 3rd, I believe. And in that time where Sable was saying we are in production, um,
and they're
and,
they at that time they were saying they were gonna sell oil in June, as I
and they
recall.
were going to sell oil in June. Um, at that time, they put some stock up for sale, and I think it was 10,000 shares. I don't quote me on that number. I think they got somewhere in the ballpark of about 275 million, 298 million
Really?
dollars of investments in that time. And
Wow.
that's not chump change. And the particularly when you think they paid Exxon 688. So the allegation is that Sable intentionally misled investors that they were way closer to the finish line than they were in order to drive up the stock of the price of stock more than it would be. And it is seems to be the case, and I don't consider myself a competent reader of financial documents, but it seems to be the case that prices jumped like about $5 a share. And not ungodly, but enough to put a lot of mayonnaise on that sandwich.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
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 that's the thrust. That's the thrust of the complaint.
that is the thrust of the complaint. The other thrust of the complaint that is interesting is that both of them rely heavily upon the quotes made by our Lieutenant Governor Eleni. You will have to help me out with her last name. Uh,
I just call her Eleni.
yeah, okay. And it's a long Greek last name, and I apologize. Monarchy or something like that. But she
Punalakis.
what is it?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm apologizing, but um,
I've rewatched Zorba the Greek a number of times, so I'm pretty
she
good.
is the lieutenant governor and also the chair of the St. Lands Commission, which has some regulatory oversight involved here, and has a slight piece of the pie. And she responded to the May 19th chest thumping press release that Sable issued, saying, in the first place, you're lying.
Yeah, you're
And
lying.
second, you're just flat out lying. And it shows bad faith and bad judgment because if it was really true and you sure the hell should have told us about it. And the fact that you're playing this game without telling us about it really makes us question anything that comes out of your mouth. She was extremely blunt in her written statement. And they are both relying on her verbiage because it is far more colorful and direct than the verbiage, the legalese that they're using.
Yeah. And so at the very well, a couple of things occur. At the very least, this adds yet another layer of a legal obstacle to Sable doing what they've already apparently claimed they're doing, which is put some oil in that pipeline at a time when they're in court here in Superior Court. Um,
Yeah, as you said, there's a Superior Court here with the county of Santa Barbara over the transfer of title and permits. But small but major detail on that one is that last week a federal judge allowed the Environmental Defense Center, really Sable's chief nemesis in this, uh, standing as an intervener in that lawsuit, which means it's going to be a lot harder for the county supervisors to just sort of settle the deal and make it go away because they're afraid, with I think some good reason, of whatever financial damages they might incur if they really hold up the deal. Linda Kropp et al. Of EDC will now have a seat at that table. That does not bode well for Sable, no matter who is on the board of supervisors. Then you have the lawsuit with the Coastal Commission, which is saying
which has imposed an $18 million fine on them
which
already.
has imposed an $18 million fine, and the Coastal Commission has been saying you can't do any of these repairs without having a coastal development
Which
permit.
have been done, which are
And
now
now they have done it, so is that issue moot? And I think that the Coastal Commission has not jumped in on the new question, which would be if the state fire marshal approves restart for Sable, would the Coastal Commission try to block it, saying they don't have a coastal development permit yet? And that would be a major, if you're looking for shoes to drop, that's a size 14. It hasn't happened yet, but it's hard to see how it won't. Then you have the State Parks Department, which still has to approve an easement along Refugio Park, for the pipeline and for a restart. That hasn't happened yet. Probably the smart money, the inside baseball people are saying state parks will probably give the permit to Sable, but who knows?
And what about the issue of the state fire marshal, who has never received this much attention in his life, but much disputed role in this, and what his role is, and whether he can do it or not do it.
Well, there is ongoing litigation that has not been finally resolved about does the state fire marshal have to have a public hearing, as the environmentalists say, state and federal law requires? Does he have to issue written explanations for why he thinks this is going to be safe enough, even using an old, dirty, corroded pipeline and the Band-Aid patches, that they will be sufficient? That has yet to be resolved, and whether or not an EIR is necessary, that has not been resolved. Now, Judge Donna Jack, a Santa Barbara County judge, has said, in all probability, the environmentalists will not prevail on you have to have a public hearing and you have to have an EIR. But she says, I'm going to give you another opportunity to take a bite at that apple, because it's only probability that she was arguing on, not the down and dirty final ruling. So that, but she also said, I think in probability you would prevail on the issue. The state fire marshal must give an explanation in writing as to its reasons why he thinks this is safe enough. To be clear to people watching, the fire marshal has done none of these. There are arguments that the fire marshal can make, saying, we've added 67 new conditions, blah, blah, blah. The state fire marshal is not just a speed bump. I mean, I think he is a serious player and he has serious concern for the safety. We just haven't seen the math.
Let me go down briefly, go down a little political rabbit hole here. Is the state fire marshal a creature of Governor Gavin Newsom, who is desperately trying to uh, remake his image as a hair product California liberal, and has been oddly silent on all of this.
Yeah, he is. Um, he is, and there is all kinds of speculation about what that silence means. And the most obvious temptation, the rabbit hole I tend to go down is that Gavin Newsom clearly is running for president. Why would he otherwise go to South Carolina? He has a real and perceived problem in terms of oil refinery capacity in the state of California. And he is desperately, he's trying to do a big budget bill, his equivalent of the big budget bill, to streamline oil permitting in the great state of California right now. It isn't getting much attention because there's so much more going on, but he's got one of these and he is attaching it to the budget. So if you want the budget to pass, you have to pass this. Now, that's kind of a big ass deal. So if I'm Gavin Newsom, I don't want to have an oil refinery issue, and I don't want it to look like California has
Nor do
one.
you want to have $6 gas.
And no, you absolutely don't want to have $6 gas. So he doesn't want to get into a fight with Sable, because even though you can really argue that Sable isn't going to affect the price of gas at all, the optics are bad. And if you make the argument, to make that argument is to have already lost it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because obviously the traditional Democratic perspective would have been to fight the oil companies, which is
Right.
what Eleni Kounalakis is doing. She's running for governor
And she's running for governor.
at the
Right.
time. So yeah, it's boy, this is it just gets more and more. And what's Sable's front man? What's his name?
Steve Rush.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, you took a picture. So it runs with your piece of the last hearing at the Board of Supervisors. And, someone once told me never trust a man who wears loafers with metal buckles. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting. All right. Okay. Well, that clears that up. So no oil is going to be flowing this week. That's for sure. Um, And it sounds like, a good week for the environmentalists. It sounds like a good week for those who don't want oil going through our county, those who have been happy that we have not had offshore oil going through our county for the last 10 years, and that a bad week for the Sable oil.
Not a great week for Sable, but Sable will fight it, as their spokesperson Alice Walton
Do
said.
you think that you think it was merely coincidental that the Interior Department put out this triumphalist press release
You know what?
just as these suits were being filed?
One cannot help but think that Sable has friends in high places and certainly has friends in the Trump administration, and that the Trump administration, who, with or without Sable, would love nothing more than to open up California's coast to oil. I mean, and their whole oil dominance and drill baby drill is, with or without Sable, is part of their portfolio. But the timing was curious. And I think what Sable needs right now is, I need my investors and our investors low in the boat. We don't need anybody rocking the boat in the investment world. We have to go out and get money, more money, because this thing is taking a lot longer than they promised. And they have to keep going to get more money to deal with more and more delays. They can't have investors thinking you guys are full of beans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the reasons that press release caught my eye was that our man in Congress, Salute Carbajal, who is second to no one in sharp rhetoric, expressed deep concern over it. So, when
Oh, give him a break. Jesus Christ.
lock up the kids, Maud. Salute is deeply
Come
concerned.
on. I mean, I know you like to beat up on Salute, but
Hey,
Salute.
I gave Salute major prop for muscling past those ice guys for about 3 feet at the
Yeah.
glass house thing. All right. Hey, listen, I know you got time constraints, but I do have to ask you, you were the first one to write a couple weeks ago about the possible concerns about ICE and immigration raids and so on during Fiesta. We haven't seen that yet, but I don't know. It seems like it's pretty much put a damper on things, just from the little of Fiesta I've seen. And I was at an event for Barney Branningham yesterday, the king of Fiesta, and a lot of us talking about that. What's your sense?
First of all, I read your piece about that and I thought it was really quite moving. And Barney was always in the hunt for churros and Fiesta, and no churro stand was
No,
unmolested, and
no,
Barney
no
was on the
churro is
prowl.
safe.
But um, I thought that Josh's piece, and I'm sorry he's not here to defend himself, Josh Molina, he wrote a really lovely piece, not lovely, but sobering piece um, about the Paul that this attached. Now, I didn't know, he had a scoop here that the Bank of Montecito had
Yeah,
withdrawn its support for a major Fiesta event. Um, I mean, I think two things are happening here.
that's
I
a
think
big deal because
that's a really big deal. Mark Alvarado of the Boys and Girls Club pulled the plug on the carnival at the Boys and Girls Club that had been proposed. There is no uh, Mackenzie Park uh, adjunct. There is no City College parking lot adjunct. I know that the Our Lady of Guadalupe is happening. I haven't been there yet, but when I was downtown yesterday, down at the Mercado, okay, there was no beer garden. Okay, and beer is a big draw. No beer garden. Why wasn't there a beer garden? Because the people who run it thought it was going to be a money loser, and there was not going to be enough people. It felt pretty threadbare. It felt a little forlorn and woebegone. I mean, there were people there. You could buy cascarones. It didn't have the sort of bursting at the seams effects that they typically have. Normally, when you go into El Mercado, at Delegado Plaza, you have to
right.
shimmy and squeeze, right? This way, you can just walk anywhere. There was none of that. Um,
And
it,
it must be said, I think, that the board of old Spanish days has not exactly been reading the room on this issue.
I kind of thought they really didn't do themselves any favors, but there's so much go on. There's nothing to look at here. But they could have acknowledged, a lot of people are afraid. We're going to do everything we can to make sure people are safe. We need the community to come together. The beauty of Fiesta, whatever its colonial origins, is that it is the best single party Santa Barbara throws for itself all year, and it is the most inclusive of all parties Santa Barbara throws for itself. So it could have had something along that vibe and acknowledging the fear, but saying we're going to come to the fact that they didn't really, I found personally disappointing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and really, when I went down there again, there is nobody in Santa Barbara who is tougher and scarier than a flamenco mom. They are so badass. And if I showed up, they would rue the day they showed up because those women aren't taking it from nobody.
Yeah.
And they were there,
Shout out
but
Cammy Barnwell.
yeah,
Yeah. And speaking of people not reading the room, you also reported on this letter that Salute and just about every other elected official in Santa Barbara County signed to Sheriff Bill Brown saying, "Hey, Bill, you're head of the National Big Sheriffs Association. Can't you do something to back these guys off?" He did not take well to that.
he declined. He declined to comment, and he waited about 3, 4 days before calling me to tell me that he was not going to be commenting. I can understand Bill might be a little pissed off because, I mean, they definitely sandbagged him. But
You mean
political,
they didn't like
they
engage in
didn't say, Bill,
private
let's have a
negotiation?
conversation. They were like, so, and I can see why he would say, this is not, you're just trying to make me look like an asshole. Though Bill does not use language like that.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, it was a valid question. And I think it's one, you know, it would take courage, it would take leadership. They would probably suffer some repercussions. This is a sheriff's, it's a major sheriff's association of America, and their leadership and membership is all over the map politically. So it would probably be seen as by a whole bunch of people, you're getting out ahead of your skis and you're getting clear with us. And what the hell are you doing? And probably it would not stand them in good stead with, you know, somebody like Stephen Miller in the White House, who was the second coming of Joseph Goebbels when it comes to this stuff. It would be like a take no prisoners response. So they would pay a price. But that being said, the fear that is being engendered by the violence and approach of these raids is some people are going to start getting. One person was killed in one of the ice raids. A lot more people are likely to get killed. And the secondhand smoke that is going to permeate from ICE to other law enforcement agencies is going to create a lot of tension that is going to create a lot more problems for law enforcement. Law enforcement officials know how to serve search warrants on cannabis greenhouses without making it a military occupation. And I think it would be really in the national interest. Of course, I have my biases for the National Major Sheriff's Association to say, you know what, there's other ways you can do this. Please do it. Really, all they were saying is de-escalate the way you're doing it.
Yeah,
And so I get why Bill Brown has his nose out of joint, but I think the point they were making, however performative, is a correct point.
is a valid point. And then, you know, I always say I read SB Current, so you don't have to. The local organ of the Trumpists and the tiny, impotent right-wing extremist minority in Santa Barbara County. But they've been banging the drum over there, including your close personal friend Andy Caldwell, who called you out in his piece on Sunday. I'm sure you didn't see it. That oh, you guys are just you know, refusing to see what the real purpose of this raid was, which was rescuing these children and stopping this international human trafficking ring and so on and so forth. Is it any clearer 2 weeks after the fact? Was this an immigration raid? Was it a workplace raid? Was it a child labor raid? I mean, what's your sense of that?
My sense is no, we don't know. I think there apparently, I will say to the current credit, they somehow have got, did they see the,
No, no, all they're quoting is the DHS press release.
okay, oh, the DHS website, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I would say what was told to us by Bill Brown at the time is that this was a judicial warrant being served to search the glass houses. So let's just take them on their word. Whatever it is, in Camarillo, they picked up what 230 people or some,
More than 300, I think. Yeah.
yeah, 300 people. So is that a raise? I don't know. Sure looks like one. Sure smells like one. Glad I didn't step in it. Here in Carpinteria, well, they pick up 14, right? Or was it 10? Um, Again, is that a raid? I don't know. You know, all I know,
Did Bill make clear when he said it was serving a federal judicial warrant, whether it was for specific individuals, accused
he
of
didn't make
crimes?
clear. And Bill probably hasn't seen the warrant, and he wouldn't want to see
Nobody's
the
seen
warrant.
the warrant.
Um,
Salute hasn't seen the warrant.
yeah,
And he's only a congressman. Why would he?
and I mean, if they really didn't want to instill fear and wanted to actually come out and say, people are confused. Let me clear it up for you. Here's our warrant.
That's not
Here's
what they
who-
want to do.
That's clearly what they want to do is create maximum fear, chaos, and panic. And it's really an agent of self-deportation.
You know, it's such a case study of how people live in information bubbles because in their information bubble this was all about child trafficking or something. And in our information bubble it was clearly a performative militarized assault.
I will say to the child trafficking issue, I've heard from people in the sheriff's department who are very prominent saying, off the record, I would like to know how old these juveniles were because uh, a lot of people who have lived in and around and near agricultural operations will tell you in the summertime, there are lots of teenagers in the fields or working or being cared for or in the proximity. So it is quite possible. Who knows what they're doing in terms, maybe this will be child labor, but when has the Trump administration given a rat's ass about labor violations? That just seems out of character. But let's just assume they actually do care. Still, there are ways of doing it. And the way they did it was not, uh, it was surgery with a chainsaw.
Yeah. All right, and finally, did you catch any of the council meeting yesterday about
No,
the
I
money
didn't.
that they're going to they want to transfer
I
to
completely missed it.
yeah. Yeah, apparently that was a interesting thing too, although I haven't read any coverage about it yet. So,
I'm
all
sure. I'm sure Ryan Cruz will have that up ASAP.
right. Although I did hear that Wendy was wearing flamenco or a fiesta uh,
Well,
costume.
not to pat myself on the back, but I think last week when people were talking about a boycott and a strike, I was suggesting Wendy Santa Maria might show up, and like you ain't gonna scare me away, Garb. And
Yeah,
I
well,
I
you called it, and
I called it.
apparently it was unclear. Randy had a tie, but it was unclear whether he was wearing that handsome pair of chaps that he always favors. So we'll, we'll,
I'm
we'll
not
have to
gonna
wait
go
till
there.
he's back on the show because Josh said he couldn't see him. He could only see him from the waist up at the dais. All right, Nick Welsh, thanks so much for taking the time to try to untangle some of these complicated issues, particularly the Sable oil offshore thing, which we may be talking about for the next 10 years. If
I hope not, man. You know, a lot of people come up to me and say, please make it stop, make it stop. And you know what? I'm totally with them.
That's very funny. Well, you know what? Every twist and turn of the story is now available on our popular YouTube channel because
Here's an obscure fact. One of the few poems I ever wrote, it was it was a poem filled with erotic yearning, all about the oil spill of May.
well, I'm glad you decided to cut it short on your poetry career because
Only one person has seen it at this point. No, two people.
it pays even less than journalism,
Yeah.
which is hard to imagine. All right, brother. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next week on
Okay, you take care.